Welcome back, everyone. This is Ayad Boudiab, and we are in the validation section of our Angular course. As you all know, when you have a form or we have some type of input for the user on your site, you need to have a way to validate that data before you submit it over to the server. Now, if you want to think about it in terms of where the validation should happen, the validation needs to happen on the client and on the server, in case the data was hacked along the way. So you need to do the validation in both locations, but my discussion right now is basically on the validation on the client side. So in this case then, we'll try to build a form for the car information with a make, model, description, and purchase date. And we need to see how we can work with validations as far as Angular is concerned. We'll start by creating our module. Of the module, we'll create our controller with the car information, add things into the scope, and be able to bind to these within the form. And if you need to learn more about the binding, we just discussed that in the previous exercise when we talked about data binding. So we'll do this in the form, and then we'll be able to use the ng pattern and ng model and so on to be able to work with that. So the first thing that I'd like to start with is creating our module and our controller. Let's go down to the page over here and the script section after we reference angular.js, and then we'll start creating our module and controller. Var main app equal angular dot module. The module is main app, and it does not depend on any other module. Again, as soon as I declare my main app, I go up to the HTML and I tell the HTML that my ng app equals main app. Let's scroll down over to the rest of the code and see how we can create our car controller. Now that we have the main app, let's do main app dot controller. This is called car controller, and that would be a function. To that function, I'll be injecting the scope, so we can add things onto the scope. Now, what do I want to add to the scope? For that, I'm going to add a car, scope.car, and that will be equal to an object. Inside that object, I'll give the car a make with initial value Toyota, and then I'll give it a model, and this one will be Corolla, and I will give it a description. Say this is, fix that, this is a reliable car. Okay, now after that I'm going to put the purchase date on that car. The purchase date, let's go with 2014-02-05. Let's say that's the purchase date. Now this gives me the scope for the car. The car added to the scope, and then the next thing I need to have is a save car button. So basically my plan is to save that car, and then of course in this case I'm not saving that anywhere. I'm just going to do an alert, but we just follow the process on how and when we can save, and that will be it will make more sense as we move into the form and start filling out that information. You know what, as a matter of fact, let's leave that empty for a moment, and then we'll come back to the save car and see how we can add that function. Let's scroll up to the top, and then over here I have my the body of the page, and then I have the div contains a form. The form has a field set, card information as a legend, and then I have a make, model, description, and purchase date. As you can see in here, I'm also referencing Bootstrap from my styles folder. So in the current folder, I have a styles folder. Under the styles folder, I'm referencing bootstrap.min.css. You could reference bootstrap.css, but .min.css, that will be the minified version, which means it's smaller in size and faster in download. You don't have to use min. Again, you can just download bootstrap.css and use that instead. So, but if you need a choice, you use bootstrap.css while debugging, and then bootstrap.min.css when things are in production. So anyway, that's Bootstrap being referenced on the page again, so I can make my form look nice. Now, I created my controller in here, and I named it car controller. So I need to go up in the div, and I say that my ng controller equals the car controller, right? All right, now I need to give my form a name, and we'll see where we're going to use that shortly. The name of the form would be car form. Okay, now we go over here for the make, model, description, and purchase date. For the make, I'm going to put an input box, and that will be type equal text, and then let's put a placeholder. Let's put that make, and now the ng model, like we've done in the previous exercise, equal the actual make, right? So this basically binds to the make from the scope. And one thing that I'm going to do on this element is I'm going to make it required. So this is not Angular specific. That's HTML5. I'm making this element required, so I'll be prompted that something is missing. I need to fill it out. Okay. Now that's as far as the make is concerned. Let's copy this and put it here. This would be input type equal text. Placeholder would be model, and then the actual model would be model for the car's model. Okay, and this is also a required field. Now let's go down here to the description. The description is also type equal text, and then the placeholder would be description. And then the ng model, of course, is description. This is based on the model that we indicated down here for the description that we added to the scope. Now for the description, I don't want to make that required. Only the make and a model are required. Now for the purchase date, this also would be type equal text. Placeholder would be purchase date. The ng model is purchase date that you see over here, right? And then this field is required. But what I'd like to do to this field, in addition to what I've done with the others, is basically give it a pattern. By giving it a pattern, then it will be validated against that pattern to make sure that the date is entered in the format that I like it to be. Okay, so that's why I would use the ng pattern available to me from Angular. The ng pattern that I'd like to use is basically year, 4-digit year, dash 4-digit month, dash 2-digit month, dash 2-digit day. So \d is basically used for the for the single digit. So when I do the following 1, 2, 3, 4, that indicates these are the 4 digits that represent the year. Dash 1, 2, these are the 2 digits that represent the month. Dash 1, 2, that will be the one representing the day. So now I indicated that I have a pattern that I'd like to use with my purchase date. 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. Okay, so that takes care of this. And now if I save this one so far, and let's copy the path and put that here, I have the make, model, description, and purchase date. And you see model, description, and purchase date, right? So they have all these 4 elements in here. Let's go ahead and work with the rest of the form. So in here, I would like to add a button. For that button, that will be the type equal submit. And then the class from CSS, or the bootstrap.css, that will be btn for button. And in this case, I'm going to associate an ng click with this one. Means when the user clicks on this button, what do you want to do? So the ng click would be equal to save car. That's the function that I have not created yet, right? Save car that takes the car object that's in scope, and then it takes the car form, which represent the form that you saw up here. Remember, I gave the form a name, car form. I'm passing that car form into the function, which is a save car function that takes the car and the car form as a parameter. Okay. Now for this button, I'm going to do other things. I'm going to make this button disabled as long as the form is invalid. But how do I do this? Well, first of all, there is a ng-disabled attribute that I can use. And well, then if it's there, what can I use to make it disabled? Well, let's go ahead first and close this one, close the button, and let's call this, let's do here submit. So the user would submit the button, submit the form. For the ng disabled, there is a $invalid option that's provided to me through Angular that tells me that the form, whether the form is invalid or not. Of course, invalid means the form is invalid. So how do I get to this? By using the car form, which is the name of the form that I indicated above, $invalid. What does that mean? Means as long as the form is invalid, the button would be disabled, which makes sense. I don't want the user to submit if the form is invalid. So as long as the form is invalid, the button would be disabled. Okay, so that's what I have so far. And also down here, I'd like to add my my function that basically does the saving. Now I'd like to add this one to the scope, right? So in this case, then I'll have to say scope.saveCar, because that's the one, that's the name of the function that I indicated above. So save car, and that will be equal to function. That function takes the car as a parameter and the car form as a parameter. Remember those two parameters that we indicated above. And then here's the body of the function. Now, one thing that I'd like to make sure right now is that I'm going to alert the user, instead of actually saving anything in the database, I'm going to alert the user whenever the form is valid. Well, remember there was the option that we used up there, car form.invalid. Well, there's an option in here that I can use. If car form passed to me as a parameter $valid, then I'm going to alert the user. So my alert statement will say we are saving the form data for this car.make, this car.model. Okay, And as long as the form is valid, I should be able to do that. Let's go ahead and save this. And let's go and look at the page as we have it on the screen. I have it here. Let's reload. Now I have the submit button. I cannot click on the submit button. You notice it's not there. I cannot put anything in it. Now if I try to fill out some information, remember this is required, this is required, I will not get any error message as far as the required is concerned because the button is disabled, so I'm not able to click in here. But let's put some information to the make, information of the model, information of the description, and some information in the purchase date. Well, the button is not valid. I cannot submit. The form is not valid, right? So the purchase date need to be in the specific format. Remember that format? 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. So let's do this. 2014-02-02. Okay? In here 02. Sorry, I missed a 0. And now you notice that my button is all of a sudden enabled. Let's do that again. Go back here, remove the field, one more element from the year. I'm sorry, from the day. The button is disabled. Add that back. Now the button is enabled. Now I can submit my form. Now let's take things from the make and submit. It's gone, right? I cannot submit anymore. Okay, let's type something in the make. Now I can submit. And it says we are saving the form data for Toyota Corolla, right? Because that's the one that we have in the car information. Okay, now let's do one more thing before we wrap up on this. Let's look, one thing we can do is let's hit F12. By doing F12, that will take me to the developer tools, and I can see things in here that I'd like to work with. Now we see that purchase date. I'm going to select that purchase date, and it takes me to the actual element, which it says placeholder purchase date, ng model purchase date. It's required, and the pattern. Look at the classes. Ng dirty. It is dirty because I added some data to it, right? It's that's why it's ng dirty. Ng valid required. Ng valid. Well, it is valid because it's valid data. And let's go ahead and come back here and try to take some data off, and notice what's going to happen down here, right? Keep your eye on the bottom portion, and if I take that out, notice now it says ng invalid class being added to it. So this is where the ng valid, ng invalid information coming in, and then of course the ng dirty again is because I changed the data. That's why it says dirty. Okay, so let's go back here and add data back. 5. Now it says ng valid back again. Okay, so let's go back to the code and scroll up in here to the top, and I'm going to, based on that information that I just read from the developer tools, I'm going to add a style to the page, and this style will basically be added down here. The style says, and I put a note for you here, I can see these properties by hitting F12, right? Input.ngdirty.ngInvalid. When the user types something, that's the input box. When it is ngdirty, because the user typed something already, right? And then it is invalid, I'm going to make the background color of that field to be red. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and go back to our page and reload it. Okay, that's the purchase date. The user should be able to enter something in here. 2014, everything is red. Notice the background is red for the form. -02-04. As soon as my date is valid, it's not background red anymore. Hit backspace, now it's red. Type a date, now it's not red anymore. So as you can see, we can manipulate that based on the style that I'd like to use. After I learned about the ng dirty and ng invalid, ng valid, that they are added automatically as I'm messing with the data. So what we did in here is we created a form. You've seen the controller before, right? We created the publisher controller. We created another one in here for car. In this case, we added another function to the scope. This function takes the car and the car form. The car form is the name of the form up here. In the fields, we used ng model to bind to those elements from the controller, from the scope. And then also we use the ng pattern to indicate the pattern how the data will be entered. We also use the ng disabled to be able to enable and disable button based on the validity of the form. And then we're able to use ng click, so we can call a function when the user clicks on that form. So that's how I can work with the validation as far as Angular is concerned. Let's go ahead and move to the other subjects. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ayad Boudiab, and you have a good day.